Hi everyone, and welcome back to Copilot Lead Speak, the series where we delve into AI security and learn a little bit more about some Microsoft security things. In today's episode, I'm very excited to welcome back Mark and to have Yaniv on the show. Now, Mark, you've been here before, so I won't ask you to reintroduce yourself. But Yaniv, would you like to tell our viewers who you are and what you do at Microsoft?
My name is Yaniv Shasha, and I'm a product manager in the customer experience engineering team. I'm, like Mark, working with our customers around deployment, around improving the product. We are getting feedback from the customer and bringing it to the feature PM to improve the generative AI and the integration between our product.
Awesome. Mark, I'm going to ask you to go straight into it, but how does Copilot for Security work?
Very good question. So there's a few fundamental aspects of the system that are important to kind of know at the outset. One of those is the concept of a prompt. And when you're looking at a generative AI product, that's becoming a familiar experience for a lot of folks. They will see a box there asking them to enter a question. In Copilot for Security, when a user provides that prompt, we consider all the various ways that we could answer that prompt for them. We look across any of the plugins that they have enabled, the various operations within those plugins, and we even consider aspects of previous questions that they've asked, and across all of those different factors, we decide which plugin would be the optimal one to match their needs to answer their question, and we then invoke that. And we do that by also considering their prompt and previous questions that they've asked. That data gets sent off to the backend systems that are answering the questions and retrieving the data for that prompt, brings it back up into Copilot for Security, and we then work to compose together a response. Sometimes that could be a bulleted list, if that's suitable for the answer. It could be a long-form narrative, maybe something a little bit shorter, even a table of results. All of that happens within the experience that they're looking at interactively as a product of that prompt and then response.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And of course, we've seen that in some of the demos that have been around for a little while now.
Yes.
But I'm gonna go to Yaniv. Yaniv, Mark mentioned plugins. Now, I know plugins are a big part of Copilot. So for any of our viewers that are watching who may not know what they are, could you talk a little bit more about their role in the product?
Yes, and I will explain it as the anatomy of the prompt. Mark mentioned that like the starting of the journey starts with the user prompt. And when a user entering a prompt in Copilot for Security, the prompt itself or the planner understand which plugin it needs to be served to be able to answer the question. And as you probably know, both of you, GPT, the foundational model, trained on the global corpus of the internet, Wikipedia, stock market. It doesn't understand what is the highest severity incident that I have in Defender or in Sentinel. So the plugin itself is the extensibility point that actually go to the product, in this case, Defender, fetching the data, and entering it to the foundational model to do all the magic that Copilot for Security know, to summarize the text, to present it, maybe to share it as a table. We have a variety of plugins. Most of them are first party, but we are working hard to extend them to third party and to even give the ability to our customer to build their extensibility point to answer specific questions that only their organization knows and understand.
That's super exciting because, as you know, Yaniv, you and I both used to work for Microsoft Sentinel, and I think we saw a similar journey with all our different connectors.
So yeah, extensibility was a huge part in the SIEM, and also we are seeing it here in the generative AI area. This will give us the variety of how we can reason on top of a variety of products and use cases and fulfill end-to-end scenario. So workflow, it's important concept here, and plugin will help us to reach this bridge and understand.
So I think it would be fair for me to assume that plugins are pretty important in Copilot for security. But I guess I wanted to dig into more how many, how many can you enable at once? And I've also heard about plugins on ChatGPT. So are you able to tell me a little bit more about how plugins differ or are the same as in ChatGPT? And if there's anything our customers should take into consideration when they're wanting to invoke these plugins?
Certainly, it's a great question. We are endeavoring to operate at a scale that is beyond really what we see even with ChatGPT. Our customers have a variety of different security products. Yaniv, I think you've heard from customers as well on that, right?
Yeah, we learned that in the average security operations center, they have between 50 to 70 different tools, and every tool introduce its own language, its own API, and the integration with them is a challenging area.
It certainly is. And that expansive scope is well beyond what you would see even in just the default deployment of, say, ChatGPT. At one point, ChatGPT required a user to choose from one of only 3 different plugins. As you may know, Microsoft has a few more than just 3 security products. Just a few more. And so you combine that with also, as Yaniv said, our very encompassing vision of how we want Copilot to be central to the experience that our customers are using in the SOC. And, well, we're going to have to do something a little bit special. And indeed, Copilot is quite special in the way that it reasons across all the different plugins that users have activated. Now, optimally, we would like to just handle all of that for them, and it would be ideal if they could simply present their prompt and we'll just figure everything out for them. We are endeavoring to do that. We're striving to that point. There will be some cases where a customer may need to refine their prompt a little bit to be just a little bit more specific and provide a little bit of guidance on where to retrieve the data from. But as long as they are willing to maybe edit the prompt a little bit or simply inspect the process log that we've provided, they can usually use that to guide them down those ideal pathways.
So Mark, you mentioned that sometimes you might have to give Copilot a little bit of extra direction as to which plugins it would use. Now, I know in traditional systems, if you were changing something like that, you might be installing something or changing an API or something like that. So I just wanted to understand, so everyone's super clear, what you're saying is that you'd just be needing to change what was in the prompt of Copilot rather than changing anything infrastructure-wise on the back end.
That's precisely correct. So one of the things that we do that is somewhat unique in Copilot is the prompts are editable. You can actually go back up within the context of your session and adjust the wording in them. And this is precisely why we do that, because oftentimes just a little bit more clarity will direct the system more precisely to exactly the outcome you're looking for. And it's a lot easier to change words than it is to go and try to reconfigure a system.
Yes, exactly. I think that's going to be a real shift in mindset for a lot of us, because when you change the functionality of a system, that always traditionally meant we were building something, taking something away. So very different, but very exciting.
It is. It's a different paradigm, really, and we're all learning together how best to optimize for the advantages and also the challenges present in interacting with large language models. We also actually have the ability, because everything is happening in the context of a session, you can even do clarifying questions or clarifying prompts. The system could possibly come back. You mentioned you were working with Sentinel before. If you said, show me the top incidents in Sentinel, the system might realize that you actually have access to more than one Sentinel workspace. The plugin that comes back from that could simply list out which workspaces you have access to and ask you, which workspace should I use to get access to this data? You could then simply respond in your prompt with the workspace name or simply the phrase, use Yaniv's favorite workspace, and it would re-invoke that plugin with all of the context necessary to actually answer that. So the prompts are not standalone, the prompts are editable, and all of that combined allows you to really direct the experiences of Copilot precisely down the pathways that are suitable for your specific environment.
So Mark, you mentioned, and I just wanted to pick up on this point, that sometimes Copilot for Security will ask a question back to the user to clarify things. Now, I find that functionality very exciting, particularly as people learn to use the product and are getting used to using prompts. So can you talk a little bit more about how that works and what users can expect to see there?
Certainly. One of the exciting things about creating a platform is seeing all the wonderful things that people build on top of it that you sometimes didn't even anticipate. Some of our most sophisticated plugin developers have begun leveraging the capabilities of the system and its awareness of context to ask clarifying questions in the flow of their plugins. And that is creating exactly the scenarios that you're talking about there. Combined with an awareness of the session and the context in which the prompts are operating in, we're actually seeing a bit of a dialogue emerging between the user, the platform capability, the underlying models, and the implementation of the plugins themselves. It's super exciting, and we're really eager to see where that goes next.
Me too. That sounds very cool.
Indeed.
So, gents, I have noticed in some of the other security products, in some of the other user interfaces that I've been using, that Copilot for Security has been popping up and is starting to be referenced. So can you talk to me a little bit more about what's happening there and what customers can expect to see going forward?
It's a good catch, Sarah. We had some learning during our early stages of the product that customers and the persona that Copilot for Security target are looking to have the generative AI and the goodness of the product embed into their own experience. So let's assume that I'm a SOC analyst and my day-to-day, I'm Open Defender and investigate an incident. So now when Copilot open in the right side and doing the incident summary right where I'm used to do the investigation, it saves me time, it gives me context directly in the user interface that I'm used to do. And you will see these nuggets, this small unit of answering a specific use case embed into Defender, into Purview, if you are a data engineer and need to have some decision on your data or DLP event. And also maybe if you are a security administrator and you are crafting a policy and you need the generative AI and Copilot for Security to help you to build the right policy to protect your devices. So this embedded experience will follow you around your UI depending on your persona and depending on the use case that you are planning to do.
So I have a follow-up question to that, which is I have seen Copilot for Security be in the sidecar and in other places in the UX, but it's just giving me some context and summarizing things. But if I wanted to ask it a question, how does that work? Because there isn't a prompt bar there in the same way. So if I wanted to dive in and start asking Copilot for Security questions, how would that work?
Sure, that's a good question. Behind the scenes, each prompt or even each invocation of a plugin exists in the context of a session. And that provides an opportunity for continuity from either multiple prompts or multiple invocations of the plugin. What you are seeing in most of our embedded experiences that Yaniv referenced is an implementation of invoking a specific plugin, oftentimes without a complete session running behind the scenes. But there's always an opportunity for the user to navigate over to what we refer to as a standalone experience, the Copilot portal where you are interacting with prompts. You can actually take that context over into that experience and extend the conversation with follow-on prompts, perhaps accessing plugins from other data sources, and really create that end-to-end experience that we know that our customers are looking for and that Yaniv mentioned.
Yeah, so I wouldn't have to copy and paste everything over because
Oh, heavens no. Although we know how much our customers love to copy paste.
it's true, but as someone who has seen this time and time again, I detest having to copy and paste things between portals because, as Yaniv said, it wastes a lot of valuable SOC time, right?
It does waste time, and it's always a risk of losing some context. And really behind every copy-paste action is an inferred process. And it is better if you are looking to scale our operations and to bring in additional team members to encode those actions in some sort of a durable method. And Copilot provides possibly one answer to do that within the context of that session.
That's awesome because as someone who worked very closely with Sentinel, we know that making these workflows efficient and saving people time on the silly little things that we used to do a lot, like copy and pasting and moving things between portals, is really, really valuable to try and remove as much of that those inefficient processes as we can and let the system do it.
Indeed. And that's also why we're so excited about the prompt books that we have within the system. Yaniv, you've had some good experience with prompt books and working with customers.
Yes, so first let me explain what is prompt books.
Please do.
It's a set of prompts that run in sequentially, that we have a couple of prompt books that we deliver with the product itself. I think several of that answer a specific narrative or a use case. It can be investigation type of prompt books, but it can be a threat actor kind of prompt books or CVE. But now we giving the option for our customers to create their own, because every customer brings its own secret sauce, its own way to do stuff. So once we will give them the option to build their own prompt books and save them and share them around the organization, they can answer, and in one click and in one input, they can run the sequential prompt, and the generative AI, Copilot for Security, will output a report and a summary that you can take and copy. Not copy.
Oh, not
No,
copy.
not copy.
Don't copy.
You can send to in other directions.
Absolutely.
That's really exciting because I assume as well, because it's all natural language, that theoretically anyone could write a series of prompts, because I'm thinking that in the past, if someone was writing, say, a playbook or a set of automation steps, they needed to understand the underlying technology behind it, whereas now what you're saying with prompt books, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that anyone who knows how to write can write a list of questions that Copilot will use.
Did you say playbooks? So I'm a big fan of automation and writing a workflow playbooks, and I spend weekends to write the right expansion and to build the right if and right control. And now with the natural language, it's easier to write an automation or a workflow that can fulfill, as I mentioned, a workflow, a use case. So it's much easier, and it also brings a different angle to the workflow. It can resonate on top of the data. It can set some decision during the workflow. So Logic App, and this is like the vehicle that we are bringing the automation and the workflow, is better together with our generative AI, and we are working hard to bring use cases to our customers.
Nice. So, Yaniv, you mentioned the Logic App. Now, I know what a Logic App is, but for anyone who's watching who may not know what a Logic App is, can you tell us what that is and what it means in the context of Copilot for Security?
And I remember that you used to build some of the Logic App, yeah?
I did.
So Azure Logic App, it's a service in Azure, and the integration that we have with Copilot for Security is in a sense of connector. So you can ask the same prompts that Mark mentioned in the chat experience directly in the Logic App and define your set of prompts in an automated way. But the beauty of Logic App is the triggering options. So Logic App can trigger on events. An event can be when a new file written to some storage, when a new email is receiving, when a new tweet are tweet in Twitter. And then you can take the context of the triggering and run a set of prompts that can create a decision, can maybe send an email to your manager, can do many other things that we have built-in connectors in the ecosystem of Azure Logic Apps. So immediately you are enjoying of more than 200 connectors that it's already there, that you can talk with VirusTotal, you can get vulnerability management with your favorite tools. So couple of advantages, the triggering, the automation, and the huge variety of connectors that is ready-made to use.
So then, just so we're very clear, because I want to understand too, can you give me an example of how Logic Apps work in tandem with Copilot for security to help out customers?
Okay, let me take you to a story.
Okay.
We are getting an incident or alert from one of our products that mention an atypical login. So the alert saying that a user login from multiple countries in short time. What our workflow on top of Azure Logic App can do, it can trigger based on every time that these new alerts are coming, take all the context of the alerts, and then start asking questions with the generative AI, doing the goodness of the summarization. And then we can capture the user manager, sending an email with the capability of Azure Logic App. Based on the manager email that we are asking if the user are traveling or not, we can feed it back into the model, into the security copilot, and write the relevant prompt based on the manager answer. And then we can keep investigate. If the user are not traveling, and we know that it's suspicious, we can keep asking a question about a user risk, identity questions, and basically branch it based on the manager answer and completing it with some relevant summary based on the outside information that we receive.
And the thing that I find so fascinating about that is it's a mix of both discrete actions as well as generative actions. Whereas previously we might have maybe looked for a keyword in the manager's response like yes or no, if we were to ask them whether the user is traveling or not, we can now actually depend on the model to reason across to the response that's coming back. And it's a very creative and very powerful way. It's an example of something that, whereas previously it would have been very difficult to do, those things are now well within our reach. And really the only limit is our creativity in how we apply it.
That's really interesting. And sounds like it's going to be a really good experience for customers as well.
We certainly do expect that. It has been our experience as we're working with the technology that there are times when the technology is amazingly well suited for the challenges of reasoning across human language. And even though it's technically just doing a mathematical model and it's really just predicting what's next, it feels like it's reasoning. And even though it's truly not, it creates outcomes that still allow us to benefit from a system as if it was.
Yeah, it helps us to do a decision point.
It does. It helps us create specific, almost the kinds of decisions that are dependent on conversations, that the decisions that really would arise only from a conversation. And that's what's now possible.
Well, gentlemen, I could talk to you all day very easily, but we probably need to wrap it up there. So Mark and Yaniv, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for the opportunity.
And to all of you who've joined us at home, I really hope that you've enjoyed our discussion today on some of the latest developments in AI security, and in particular, Copilot for security. And I'm Sarah Young. Thank you for joining us on Copilot Leet Speak. I'll see you next time.